Hi everyone, it is Deanda. Welcome to my channel. So today what I want to do is talk to you guys about some of the current events that have been happening here lately in the past couple of weeks. Today is Tuesday, maybe it's the 9th, maybe it's the 10th of June. I'm not really sure. I am a teacher on break, and so some point in the summer, like it's my son. He's a little loud. Don't mind him. Dates kind of become irrelevant, right? And then also I obviously am in a different location. I'm not at home, and so you may hear the chickens out back. Don't mind them either. And so like the last couple weeks have been very heavy. Like the word that I would just use to describe the state of our nation right now, like, or just the climate, is just very heavy. And I'm feeling I don't feel that heaviness, like personally, as much now as I did a couple weeks ago when George Floyd passed away. And it was just such a heavy time because Black folks in America have gotten to the point where it's like enough is enough is enough, and this is enough. And his murder, like if we can just say it that way, was right on the heels of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, and then the situation with Amy Cooper in Central Park, and just so many years of just foolishness and Black people unjustly losing their lives at the hand of police who are either racist or have some sort of racial bias. And so like that is just not okay. I just want to talk a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to end on a more positive note, so I'm going to talk about the ugly and the bad first, and then we'll end with the good. So the ugly is that just full on blatant bigotry and racism has been on display. And when I look at the photos from a lot of the things going on in the civil rights movement, where, you know, you had schools that were being integrated, and you see these photographs of just like the angry mobs behind the Black children who are going into schools, going into the white schools for the first time. To me, now that angry mob has kind of been replaced by the comments section on the news sites or social media. And like it is just so ugly, and there are people who are just really showing their true colors right now. And one instance that comes to mind is in my particular city, there was a headline of a retired naval officer who accidentally went on Facebook Live while he was having a conversation with his wife in the privacy of their own home about just, you know, the current events and things that are going on. And he was talking about Black people in a very disparaging way, and making racial slurs and just ugly racist comments. And of course, you know, on the heels of that comes this apology directly afterwards. And I'm just like, if that's how you really feel, like, you don't have to apologize for it, because you're maybe not really sorry, and like you just feel how you feel. And so I've seen just so many people who like are posting themselves online, showing their racism. And like I've seen photos of people in blackface and they think it's so funny. And the uglier thing to me is that I've seen a lot of young people doing things like this. So college students, high school students, and like these are the folks who are our future. And so it is just not okay. It's just not okay. But let's talk about the bad. So some of the bad I've noticed is there are people who are just not open at all to the idea that they may have some racial bias, they may have some prejudice that is contributing to systems of racism, and that that hinders things from moving forward, right? And so like it's not good. Something else bad that I've noticed is that there's certain terms that have become like trigger words. For example, Black Lives Matter, and then you have the term white privilege, which also is a trigger word that causes people to just shut down and not be willing to hear or listen or learn. And then we have like the camp of All Lives Matter that just causes friction with people who believe that Black Lives Matter. And Like there's these trigger words that just cause people to not be able to engage in productive dialogue, because it's like once they hear that, they just, just shut down. And so I think it's really unfortunate, because I think like now is the time to have some productive dialogue. As far as Black Lives Matter, I absolutely, like I said, I believe that Black lives do matter. And if there's anyone who just really, like it burns you to hear that, or it really, really rubs them the wrong way, then I feel like that is a person who may need to be open to the idea that because they're not Black, they have the privilege of not having to deal with and see racism for what it is, and for how it manifests itself in so many different systems in America. And so like it's a privilege, for the people who really struggle with hearing that hearing the words Black Lives Matter. Like I just really have to wonder, like, why is that so hard to say? Or why is it like you don't even have to say it yourself, but like why do people feel like that's wrong? And I feel like at this point, like there have been analogies, there have been diagrams, there have been pie charts, like all learning modalities have been tapped. People have created all kinds of resources to explain why, like at this point in history, why it's not okay to just combat Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter. And like if people don't get it at this point, it's just because they don't want to. And like as far as the whole All Lives Matter thing, do I believe that all lives matter? Absolutely. Everyone who is, here on this earth was created by God, and all of us are important to him. But we're just at a point in history right now, like where we want to bring awareness to the fact that Black lives are being lost unjustly at the hands of police, and it's not okay, And so like that's why this has become a movement. But people who are open are going to be open, and if they're not, like until anyone is ready to do the hard work for themselves and to really take a step back and be introspective and just very self-aware, like what can you do, right? What's also bad is that like what this whole situation is about, that racism is still happening. It's unjust, it is not right, it is evil, and I mean, to boil it all down, it's a sin. And I feel like, racism is rooted in pride. Anyone who has racist beliefs has exalted themselves above other people, and in their own estimation found themselves to be higher than what they really are. God is not a respecter of persons. He doesn't see white people up here or Black people down here, or he doesn't see Black people up here and white people beneath them. He loves us all the same. He's given us all the same opportunity to have a relationship with him through his son Jesus Christ, and God is not pleased with racism. I feel like I can confidently say that. And racism is just it's an issue of the heart, and until people are willing to do the hard work, then real and lasting change, it doesn't happen. So now that I've shared my thoughts on the ugly and the bad, let's talk about the good. So I think it's good that it seems like there are so many more people who are taking this particular issue of social justice a lot more seriously. There are a lot of people who are realizing that racism plays a role in policing and in many other systems, also including education. Of course, I would have to highlight education because I am a teacher. It seems like people are like talking about being willing to do some anti-racist work and just really be reflective of any racial bias that they may have. And so hopefully like that continues on as time goes on. That is like something that I even had to do for myself, even though, I'm not white. Obviously I am Black. But I remember either in my first, second, or third year teaching, because I know it was when I was teaching first grade. In my first 3 years of teaching, I taught first grade. And one day our school secretary brought a little boy down to my office, like, how when you're getting, the way it was at my old school, you just didn't know when you were going to get a new student. There was no advance notice. They just pop up at your door like, hey, here's your new student. And so it was one of those situations. And this little boy was at my front door, and I remember thinking to myself a negative thought like, he just looks like he's about to be trouble. And that was bias on my part, and it was wrong. And that student, I still remember his name to this day, he proved me to be absolutely wrong. He was an outstanding student, got along well with his classmates, wanted to please, and he was a very high achieving student. And so God had to check me on that. Like, I felt horrible just thinking about how, I had made the snapshot judgment of this child, and it was wrong. And I'm really fortunate that at my school where I used to teach, my principal took equity training very, very seriously. So we did work around equity in education for several years. Like she really honed in and really focused on that. And it helped me to grow a lot. And I remember still like her go-to guy was Pedro Noguero, who he's a professor and he does a lot of activism work surrounding equity in education. And so she just thought he was the most handsome thing. So she'd be like, oh, Pedro, which I thought was kind of funny. It's neither here or there. It's just something I remember. But it really helped me to dig in and dive in and do that work. And because we focused on it, like it wasn't just a one afternoon, like one-off professional development. Like that was our main focus as a school for several years. And so at first I kind of felt like, well, I don't really need this. Like, obviously I'm already Black. But when we dug in and like started doing the work, I saw certain things. And we had to do an activity like where you wrote down the names of all your students, and then I think you had to like over to the side write the list of students who you sent away from the group most often, or who you sent out of the classroom most often. And when I looked at that, I was like, okay, I was able to see a pattern, and it really caused me to be more reflective in my practice as an educator. And so I would just encourage, if you are a teacher, take the time and do the work. So I'm trying to think like, what was my point? So we're talking about the good, and it just seems like there are more people who are just open to being more introspective and doing the work. And I hope that it's not just a thing where it falls off for people and they're like, oh, glad that it's over and we can go back to life as normal. And when individual people change, that's how families change, and that's how communities change, and that's how systems change. And so it's my hope that people are just really ready for change and ready to do the work that's necessary to affect real change. I also think that it's a good thing that the Black community is being heard, that people are seeing, the world is seeing like, we want justice, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so not only in all of the states have there been protests, but also in different countries around the globe. I've seen in Spain and in Sweden and in Korea and Germany, just like so many different places, people are supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think that is a positive thing, right? And some good that I've seen is that the officer who murdered George Floyd has been arrested. That is a step definitely in the direction of justice. So another good thing is that I've been seeing some good productive conversations happening, particularly in the body of Christ. And so the body of Christ, what I mean when I say that is just among believers, people who are Christians. Racism has been, in the church for many years, and that is not right. Like racism, as I said before, it's a hard issue. It is a sin, and there's no place for it anywhere, but particularly and especially in the church. God is a God of justice. One thing in particular I would like to highlight is that my pastor back in the month of February did an entire series on racism, and it was called One Blood. And during that series, I was wondering if he was going to talk about white privilege, because like within the first couple messages, like he hadn't mentioned it. And so I was really glad to see that he, in his series, did bring up the topic of white privilege, because I think that's important to discuss when you're discussing racism, particularly in America. And so I just think it's a good thing that like we're having those conversations now, and that we not just stop at the conversations, but that we, especially if you're a Christian or a believer, that we study the scriptures for ourselves and see what God's stance is on this, and that we allow our hearts to be changed. So those are my thoughts, guys. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. If you enjoyed it, you can drop a comment down below, and thanks for watching, guys. Bye.